Welcome to Bottomfall, Love and Death Between Here and Lost, Expanded Edition, 2013. Welcome back to Hybrid Theory. I'm Aurian Archive, and let's dive right back in. As you may already notice on the screen, we're pretty much picking up from where the last stream left off. Kind of. This time I did try to remember to put in the description a video that I took while I was in the in-between. So we're going to go over real quickly a recap of the previous stream and then pick up. We started with talking about the various original archetypes, tanker, scrapper, blaster, defender, controller. We talked about how the tank, scrap, defender, and controller had their damage value based off of blasters, but the blaster damage scales were broken from the start. And then we went from there into talking about how the villain archetypes, Brute, Dominator, Corruptor, Stalker, Mastermind, were predicated on smashing together the hero archetypes and then finding different ways of implementing the hero archetypes. Now, there's a separation here that we'll come back to, hopefully in this stream. If not, it'll probably be in tomorrow's stream. And then we moved on to Masterminds. Masterminds are fundamentally broken. They did not ship out of the box with a number of features that would have given the player more control or given the player more predictable control. There are a number of resets and triggers built into the game that the player has no control over in order to get Mastermind pets to move with the player. Because of these underlying synthetic intelligence routines, the player is essentially dependent on the synthetic intelligence to figure out what it wants the player's pets to do. There really is you cannot tell a pet to go to somewhere and have it do something. Your go-to range can be set outside of your supremacy range, so thus if you're trying to use the go-to functions, you can literally take your pets outside of your buff range as the mastermind. So we talked about a better supremacy UI prompt, making it clearer that supremacy is affecting a pet. We discussed increasing the range on supremacy itself. Maybe not quite zone-wide, but wide enough that under practical range conditions, say 80 to 100 feet, supremacy will be active on any pets that could possibly be attacking a target that the mastermind can target. And then we'd also talked about syncing the pet's movements to the player, which would have been very useful. We also talked about breaking and resyncing on geoempathing hit limits. And then we also talked about formations. Instead of having the current defensive, offensive, heal commands, expanding them to shape-based and triangle. Pets go on offensive. They try to hold a triangle shape around a player. Circle. Pets go. That's the bodyguard mode. You put that in there. All your damage is shared between pets, whether or not they are in range. Now, there may be talk about a trade-off there. Going in a circle means that maybe your pets do less damage, or maybe there's a decrease on how far away the pets can go from the player. That's something open to discussion. How would we want that to actually work? Square, fallback, like the heal mode, pets don't attack, they stay close to the player, and maximize their sync behavior. Pentagram, free for all, current behavior, pets use the synthetic intelligence for set behavior. And then we also talked about adding pet endurance synchronicity, where each pet contributes 10% to the base end. And thus, as a player, as you get stronger debuffs or buffs that have higher endurance costs, or you get attacks, or you get into your tertiary powers, you don't drain your endurance simply using your powers. Again, as I demonstrated in a previous live stream, the toggles were predicated on the player only using one toggle at a time, turning that toggle off, and then turning another toggle on, which nobody ever did. And rather than admit that, Cryptic, rather than admitting they screwed up, they just made stamina inherent. And then we also talked about passing on the travel power to the pets always. If a mastermind jumps, the pet jumps. If a mastermind flies, the pets fly. If a mastermind has super speed, the pets have super speed. Pass the behavior down. And then we went on and we talked about incandescence. Currently, it's a very useful power for masterminds. But a lot of players don't take incandescence because if you use it, you annoy your teammates with constant teleport prompts, or if they turn teleport prompts off, then they don't get in-canned at all and don't get to benefit from it. My suggestion is resplit it. Make the core and the radial versions equal in power, equal in strength, equal in everything that they do, but the teleport prompt only goes to the player, or rather the player only incans on themselves when they take the radial. The player only incans, and that brings, like, if a pet is outside of range, the pet is not synced, they're in the pentagram mode, then the pets, or if they are a controller pet, or if they are an incarnate pet, something that does not adhere to the formations of a mastermind, then a player can just radial, incanned, pets are there. Boom, done. Doesn't affect the team. The team doesn't have to say, would you mind knocking the incand off? You're ruining my aggro. And then we went from there and we talked about how my statement that non-defense IO buffs can be tripled, flat tripled. And then I went into why defense is so powerful. Now, in the description of this live stream is a link to a video I just did showing on a Windows system with Mid-Zero Reborn how easy it is to get to Smashing Lethal Soft Cap on a non-armor archetype. It just takes 3 defensive powers: combat jumping, weave, and maneuvers, 1 ancillary power, be it, if you're just going for Smashing Lethal, you can either take the Mace Mastery, Scorpion Shield at 35, or you can take the Ice Mastery or Stone Mastery, Frozen Armor or Stone Armor at level 41, and then all you need is just 2 IOs, just 2, the Steadfast Protection Resist Defense and the Gladiator's Armor Defense Teleport Protection. That's it, and you are at Smashing Lethal Soft Cap. If that's all you're going for, you've now got a lot of slots to do whatever you want with. Or you can just throw SOs in them and you'll still be at soft cap. Now, armor sets, that's a different story, and that's depending on what armor you took. You may have a dramatic amount of difficulty getting to a defensive soft cap. Or at least getting to a Warshade, like it was a struggle getting to a melee defensive soft cap, as it simply didn't have the powers in such a way that made that an easy jump. Alright, and then over here on the righter side of the screen, we talked about our time to defeat, time to drop, TTD. And it's the amount of time it takes to defeat an enemy with the natural attack chain. And then we define a natural attack chain. And then we define why elemental damage is often not any better than Smashing Lethal, because enemies simply don't have weaknesses to elemental damages that let the lower elemental damages outpower the stronger Smashing Lethal damages. Now, this is a global problem. There's no easy fix for here. Cryptic screwed it up to begin with. They set the resist for NPCs too high, and they set the damage value for elemental powers too low. They handled it with kid gloves, and making mistakes like that again on current archetypes should not be done. New archetypes should consider, if you do an elemental attack, the elemental attack against an enemy that has an elemental resistance, that attack should do visibly more damage, as in if a Smashing Lethal attack takes off a quarter of a health, the elemental attack better take off at least a third or more. It better be a visible damage impact, and that simply does not happen under the current balance. And yeah, I realize it's a tall order to talk about, but keeping in mind previous mistakes really helps not make those mistakes again. So, let's continue where I kind of left off, talking about the defense caps and the value of other IO buffs, or the lack of value of those buffs. So we're going to do a new slide, and once again I am back on the micro keyboard, so please bear with me as I figure out what the key combinations are. Not having a number pad is kind of messing with my head. Alright. And we're going to we're just going to do we'll do these in black. And we'll put you 2 apart. And we'll do text. Alright. Our defense cap is 45%. our resist cap, most non-armor sets is 75%, but on armor sets, Scrapper, Stalker, Sentinel cap is still 75% resist. Okay, what does this mean in practice in building IOs? Well, if all you have to meet is, and we'll go ahead and say this, spell this out here, a high value for defense would be 3.75% defense. A high value, and I've only seen this used once for resist, is a 4%. Most often it's 2.25%. So if 75% is our goal, and this is only used once, and this can be used 5 times, let's do a little quick math here. That can be used 5 times. This is the rule of 5. Alright, for those who don't know what the rule of 5 is, rule of 5. Only 5 of one bonus. Period. Or only 5 of one named. Oh, wait, wrong button. Of one named bonus. Okay, now what this practically means, so we'll give ourselves a new box, is that you can only have, and we'll do this in, we'll do light gray text. You can have 5x Luck of the Gambler 7.5. You can also have 5x Sudden Acceleration 7.5, as they are different buffs. They're actually different line buffs, so they count differently. But they're one of the few buffs that don't overlap. Most of the time, and like say Luck of the Gambler 2x or 2IO is 10% regen, which it shares with Shield Wall 2IO 10% regen. What this means is that you can only have 5 Luck of the Gamblers, and then these shield walls don't give you any 5x LOTG equals 0 shield wall. And 5x shield wall equals 0 LOTG. Does that make sense? Yeah, the Luck of the Gambler 7.5 and the Sudden Acceleration Kinetic Crash 7.5 are one of the few overlaps for the most part. If you see a buff that is the same value, you can only use it 5 times before it stops counting. Now, in Pines and Mid-Zero Reborn, if you check the statistics window, like since I'm not looking at it, but one of the options will actually highlight in red whether or not you've gone over the buff. So let's do, just a quick calculation here. No, I did not want to bring up calc. I wanted to bring up calculator. Close. Alright, so 3.75 x5. X5 is 18.75. 2.25 times 5, 11.25. Equals, alright. So you can already see a problem here. The most common resist value is already far below a common high-end defense value. You've got greater ground to cover, and you have less opportunities, and this goes into the video linked in the description. Combat jumping, weave, maneuvers, stealth, they all add base defense. They boost all defensive powers. There is no base resist power. There is tough, but that only affects smashing and lethal. There's no other until you get to the ancillary powers, and if you take a resist shield, you don't get a defense shield. And you can only choose like smashing lethal energy, smashing lethal cold, or smashing lethal fire. You don't get a wide range. So you have 4 pool powers at minimum that boost all defenses equally, hitting all ranges, and you've got 1 resist power in the pool powers, 1 to 4. So let's write that down. And because this is important, we'll leave this in black. Alright, and we'll list them off. Combat jumping, weave, maneuvers, stealth. And over here on this side, we have, because it's important, tough. That's it. Over here, and again, black because this is important, we have Scorpion Shield, Ice Shield, Stone Shield. Over here, alright, black, we have Fire Shield, we have Dark Shield, we have Temp and Vuln, we have Electric Shield. Alright. I may have to reach over and actually fire up. Okay. One second, I am actually going to go glance at the laptop. Okay, here we go. Come on, load up. Okay. Alright. Okay, Fire Shield, Frozen Armor, Shark Skin, Charged Armor, less Electric, so the one I'm missing is apparently, there's Temp and Vuln. Okay, Mind Over Body and Shark Skin. Dark Embrace is the Dark Shield. So Mind Over Body and Shark Skin. So Mind Over Body, Shark Skin. So this is, tough is, Smash Lethal, and these are all Smash Lethal or their element. So Fire is Smash Lethal Fire, Dark is Smash Lethal Negative energy. Temp and Vuln is smash lethal energy, or just smash lethal. Electric Shield is smash lethal energy. Mind over Body is smash lethal psi. Shark Skin is smash lethal cold. The point here is that you've got a wealth of options to boost base defense here, and with these, with either one of those threes, and just two procs. Go black. Alright. Gladiator's Armor. Steadfast Protection. That's it. You're at soft cap. You can reach defensive soft cap with just this. You can't even get close to that kind of... you won't get close to that kind of resistance values on a non-armor archetype just using resist powers. And again, there is a massive gap here. The most common resists you're going to get are around 2.25%. You may see some 3.25% or something around there. And those 3.25 times 5, 16.25. So if you put those two together, you somehow spent you took 10 powers and you just went full blown for resist. 11.25 plus 16.25, 27.5. Alright. Does this frame the scale of the problem? Now, if we turn that 2.5%, 2.25, 2.25 times 3, and then so let's come down here. We'll make a new box, and we'll label this one orange. And we'll take 2.25 x3 equals 6.75. 6.75 x5, 33.70. 6.75 x5 equals 33.75. Now, and again, I really should have just brought the laptop over. Okay. For reference, on a controller, Dark Embrace has a base resist value of 27.5. Fire on a controller, Fire Shield is 27.5. Frozen Armor on Cold is resistance 30%. So actually the defensive armor offers higher resist than two of the resist armors so far. Leviathan Mastery, Shark Skin offers 27 to 27.5 to Smashing Lethal Cold. Moo Mastery, Charged Armor offers 27.5% to Smashing Lethal Energy. Primal Forces, which is temporary invulnerability, 30% to Smashing Lethal. So finally a resist that catches up to Ice Mastery, what Ice Mastery offers in a defensive power. Alright, Mind over Body, 27.5% to Smashing Lethal, 20% to Psionic. And Soul Mastery. We have on Dark Embrace 27.5 to Smashing Lethal, 15% to Negative, and 15% to Toxic. Well, that's not good. And Stone Mastery, lastly, with Rock Armor, it does offer Smashing Lethal Defense at 14.4%, no resist at all. Alright. So we're dealing with, on average, 27.5. And if we buff that, I'm just going to go back and grab, we'll do, since the worst one there was Soul Mastery Dark Embrace, we'll just take Dark Embrace and put 3 resist procs in it. And our totals now go to 43.5 to smashing, 43.5 to lethal, 23 to toxic, 23.7 to negative. So, okay, we'll call that 44 for calculation's sake. So we'll just come back and we'll do ED capped. We're looking at, come over here, ED capped equals, we'll do 40, what was that, 44? Yeah, it was like 40. Do I want to round up or do I want to round down? I think for calculatory sake, better to round up. So, yeah, we'll round up to 44. Alright, so 44%. Okay? So 44 plus 27.5. Whoa. 44 plus, whoa, what's going on with this calculator? $44 plus 27.5. Alright. And this is where the live developers, I think, stopped thinking about the problem. Because when you do add it up, if you go, you slam your resist into cap, you have 44 plus 27.5 base for 71.5. You add any more resist to that type, and you effectively are into that 75% cap. But here's the problem. That 75% cap means that out of 100%, and we'll come over here back to the middle, and we'll do this one in obnoxious orange. 100% minus 75% equals 25%. Even at resist cap on Smash Lethal, even if you are taking only 25% of the incoming damage on resist on a non-armor character, you're still taking, on average, 75%. Alright, we'll actually widen this box to make this a little clearer. Equals 25. Smash Lethal. Energy negative, fire cold, toxic psi. 100% minus, what is that, 27.5? Alright. 100 minus 27.5 is 72.5. So, to reiterate, and we'll Lengthen this out. Now I want to lengthen you. Alright, so what we got here is, on Smashing Lethal, even if you slammed, you took Tough, you took Fire Shield, you somehow managed to find enough Smash Lethal Resist to push 27.5, and you were slammed into the cap, and you'd only be taking 25% of incoming damage on Smash Lethal, you'd still be taking 100% of the magnitude. Mez. You'll be taking 100% magnitude of Mez, and you'd still be taking on average 72.5% of energy negative, fire cold, toxic psi, most of them. Although you might have a little bit of protection, but as I just listed off going down the list, all of those other side protections that weren't Smash Lethal were lower, except on Ice Shield, which is a defensive power. Okay? And again, this is really where the live developers stopped thinking about it, is that I think I'm going to need a new slide, or I'm just going to have to alright. And we're going to put this one in. Do I have an obnoxious pink? Not really. Oh, well, okay, maybe in there. There's a nice pink. Alright. Alright, we'll just take it back to standard. And we'll leave it there. Attacks count against highest modifier. Now what this means is that if an attack comes in which means that a smashing fire attack, if your fire defense is higher, that's going to calculate it. Calc. Let's say you had a negative cold. If your negative defense is higher, that's what's calced. But when it comes to taking damage from attacks, if you're resisting it, you don't just... Okay, defense, this is how defense works, is that the majority of attacks in the game are smashing lethal. So if you have soft cap to smashing lethal, the majority of attacks will miss you. But that's not how resist works. Resist works differently. Speaking, and we'll move this up. Give ourselves another box. And we'll go looking for an obnoxious color. Material. And we'll go with this obnoxious purple. With resist, each damage type counts. Or if you take smashing fire, both calculate it. Now, what this means is that if somebody hits you with a uh, attack that has, a fire sword, you take the smashing damage and you take the fire damage. And the amount of damage you take is determined by your resistance. So what happens if you have a lower resist value on a component of it? Like, say you take a negative cold. Both calculated. And this is something you can see in-game with real numbers. And if we come back and we'll look at our character who is still logged in, we'll bring her back up to the top. Now, she's only a defender, so this may get a little ugly. Now, I'm intentionally going to go tick off something that's at least at, well, should not be a threat. Hello, player. I'm guessing that was a Fahrenheit joke, but... Alright, we have a Fallen Brawler. And can he even... Alright, Fallen... I may have to go find something a little... Alright, no, I'll go pick on some Circle of Thorns. Which may not necessarily be the best idea, mind you. But what I want to do is go find something that gives a multi-component attack. Or something that have multiple components in their attacks. And right offhand, I'm thinking Hellions, Skulls, or Circle of Thorns might be good ways to show this. Alright, there's a Slammer. Okay, there's a Damned, there's a Boss. So he should be able to hit me. Alright. Alright, picking somebody with fire melee may not have been... You can see he's hitting me with lots of fire damage. He's not actually using an attack with a smashing lethal component. There goes his combustion. May have to go find a higher level. Alright, there's a slightly higher level. And as you can see, they are actually doing kind of a number only. So we'll scamper out of here before I get smooshed. And we're going to drop it back down so we can see him press. Okay. I may not be... I'm pretty sure that I don't have a character at high enough level on this server to show dual blast type. But the thing is, some of those attacks were ranged damage. I can actually, if we go back and look through them, bring it back up. Incinerate is a melee. Scorch is a melee. Incinerate, incinerate, incinerate. Scorch. Scorch, combustion, PBAOE, flares, ranged. So if you have enemies, if you have smashing lethal defense, and somebody hits you with a ranged attack that does not have a smashing lethal component, then you're still going to take the attack. So resist does matter in that case. And that's why if you can force a fight at melee range, you can see that the vast majority of attacks I just took were all of the melee type. If I was soft capped to smashing lethal, I'd probably have a very good melee boost as well, and most of those attacks wouldn't have landed at all. Whereas you can see, even though I was several levels higher than them, level 11 versus 8, their attacks were still able to damage my character significantly. So bringing it back to our impress spreadsheet, where simply having defense will go a long way towards. Actually, no, I want to go. Since I don't want to log off yet, I will go park and base. Okay. Yep. Supergroup base, please. Now we can drop that back down. Look back at Impress. So we have each of our damage type counts, and you are more vulnerable. You can't force a scenario where you where the majority of attacks will be of a kind you have a protection to. You have a higher barrier to close that gap. But if we come down and look at our X3 figure, if we do 33.75%, we were able to conveniently get that across a number of powers. We'd have more freedom to take other resist components and improve our overall resist. And the same thing can be said about maximum hit points. Good luck capping your hit points on any character that does not have a hit point boosting power of their own. And even then, if you have a character that has a hit point boosting power of their own, say willpower, depending on your archetype, you still may not even be able to get close to the hit point cap. Tanker, I'm looking at you. And regeneration is another one. And this is where, I'm going to run over to or actually I could probably just link some builds. But a high regen, like, what would you consider to be a high regen? 100%? 200%? At what point would you say, yeah, that's a really high regeneration rate? Well, for comparison, I'm going to do a defender. No. Okay, nuclear. And yeah, I realize you can't see what I'm doing, so I'm just going to have to read it off to you. I'm going to do defender. I'm going to do empathy. And I'm going to do accolades. I'm going to turn freedom phalanx reserve, portal jockey attack for commander, atlas medallion on. And I'm going to go incarnates. I'm going to do I'm going to do Vigor Core Paragon, which is healing, accuracy, endurance reduction. And I'm going to hit Regeneration Aura. And I'm going to put 3 slots in it. I'm going to slam Regeneration Aura into ED cap at 131.33% pre-ED, 172.2% on the heal, 99.08% pre-ED, 127.2% on the absorb, although that doesn't apply to Regeneration Aura. And I'm going to come down to health, and I'm going to put in a Nuke proc, which gives you regeneration recovery. I'm going to put in I'm actually going to take Nuke out to 3 slots with a Nuke heal endurance and a Nuke heal. And then I'm going to go pull powers, fighting. I'm going to do kick, tough, weave. I'm going to go up to tough, put 3 slots in it. Going to give it unbreakable guard, 7.5% health cap. I'm going to give it impervious skin, status resistance, regeneration, and nothing else there. Okay, I'm going to come back down to health, and I'm going to put in the regenerative tissue, regeneration. Okay, so now we have regenerative aura, health with a Numi proc, a heal in. I already gave you the numbers. Health is health is not ED capped yet, even with Vigo. So we're going to add a. We're going to slam it in by taking Panacea. I know the hit points endurance won't count for anything in terms of regeneration. Okay, now we are with a Panacea heal. We are now at 128.95% pre-ED, 156.3% on the heal, 96.7% pre-ED, 111.3%, but absorb doesn't count here. So now that sounds like we're running pretty high numbers. I'm going to do window. I'm going to do advanced totals so I can see what's going on. And I'm going to look at regen and max HP. Right now, my max HP is 1315.85 out of 1606.345. Our base HP was 1017 hit points. Our regeneration is at 273%. For reference, that means we're turning on 15 HP per second right now. Going to hit regeneration aura. Our regen has now jumped to 1430.23%. We are now regenerating 78.42% hit points. Well, that sounds really high, doesn't it? Actually, yeah, it is. Since all you need for a 707 fire farm is 20 is soft cap to fire defense, 85 between 80 to 85% fire resist, and around 22 HP per second. That actually sounds really good, but that's with a regeneration aura on. And that was on regen. Is there any other set that can do that in the defender side? Well, not really. You've got temporal mending, and you've got, but that's a heal. You go over in radiation, you've got accelerate metabolism, but that's recharge recovery. That's not a regeneration. Dark miasma, twilight grasp is a heal. All right. The point is that as you go down through it, on a high-end mega recharge soft cap build, and I mean something that's truly game-breaking, offensive power that can rival that of blasters. Say something like a time fire defender. Something that has rune of protection. Something that can rumble around with soft cap to smashing lethal, energy negative, fire cold, melee ranged, and AoE defenses. Something that is, let's turn Ruppel off. Something that can casually wander around with 48% to smashing lethal resist, 10% energy resist, 30% negative energy resist, 41% fire cold resist, and 27% toxic resist. Sounds pretty decent, right? Well, up until I go to the regeneration. Advanced totals. Max HP. Let's make sure I got accolades turned on. They are turned on. On a high-end build, max HP 1203.94 HP over 1017 HP. Regen 186%. Regeneration 9.33 hit points per second. Say, there's a trade-off between maximizing a character that has a significant amount of defensive potential or resist potential versus maximizing a character that has a resist potential, or rather regeneration potential. The short version is, at 10%, 12%, 14%, and 16% regenerations, and as far as I know, I think there's only one exposed set that actually has a 16% regeneration, and I'm pretty sure that is the purple Apocalypse. I'm pretty sure that is the only 16% regeneration invoked in the game. I'm not aware of any ATO, Archetype Origin Enhancement, that goes that high. And I'm kind of looking through the archetype. No, I'm pretty sure that... What did that give me? No. So 16% regeneration. And pretty much the highest you will see outside of that is the 12% regeneration on Overwhelming Force. And the 12% on, I think, Decimation? No, not Decimation. Devastation. Let me check that. I'm pretty sure it's Overwhelming Force and Devastation. Yeah. Overwhelming Force, Devastation, Nuke, which has... No, that's a miracle. Do I have Nuke on this character? I mean, it's like a better. Wow, I don't actually have a Nuke on this character. I guess she was hard up for more end than I thought. Alright, okay, yeah, Nuke is 12%. So Nuke, Devastation, Overwhelming Force. There's a couple places where you can get 12% regeneration. As far as I know, there is no exposed in-game set that has 14% regeneration. But you start adding those numbers up, and you can cap 10% times 5 or 50% regeneration pretty quickly. But on a very low hit point count, when your base is barely over 1,000 hit points, you can add all the regeneration in the world on top of that, and you're not gaining anything. And that's, again, where we come back to, you could literally triple that value. And because of the resist cap, because most archetypes are capped to 75% resist, a regeneration is going to have far more improvement over resist, or at least in combination with resist. And it's that kind of approach where increasing the amount of hit points that players can get, increasing the amount of mag protection, so that they're not taking 100% magnitude on every single hit that they take on a resist framework, that they just don't get hit with on a defensive framework. That goes a long way towards making it possible to field builds that are not reliant on soft cap defense. Soft cap defense is very powerful because it is readily available. It's something that you can get on almost any non-armor archetype. You can get it on almost all armor archetypes. The only one that's really problematic are Fire and Dark, and that's mostly because they have some unique problems you need to address, the knockback being one of them, the lack of the intentional design flaws where I say that bioarmor is a better fire armor than fire armor. I kind of need to stress here is that fire armor was sold to players on the basis of you are getting more damage in return for less survivability, but your damage is only exposed through a power that is a click. It's not inherent to the build. Whereas on bioarmor, your damage bonus, your trade-off, is built into the powers. You don't have to click anything to get it. It's just there and part of the set. Not to mention that in bioplasma mode, it looks more like fire armor than fire does. At least if you color it bright pink or bright white. Alright, so that's covering over why defense is so powerful, why it's so easy to get the soft caps, why that is incredibly more valuable than... And again, I'm remembering that, if you had a attack with two components, both components would be calculated, because I remember getting hit with, you hit for 50 point smashing damage, you take fire damage over time. But since I didn't have that happen, on this character that I'm on, I don't know if that's because I'm just at such a low level. I'm just not up against any characters that are flinging dual or triple or quadruple element attacks. Alright. And there was something else where I kind of wanted to come back to. So to recap what we covered today. Oh, right. Alright. Since I've beat soft cap defense and why all the other IO values could just be flat increased. You could triple them And you probably at least... Okay. I think that if you actually did triple all of them, you would make resist-based, HP-based, regen-based approaches to character building as effective as existing soft cap builds. But there's a small caveat to that, that once you make resist more powerful as a base IO, you also in turn make mixed builds, those already mixed defense and resistance, even more powerful. And defense resist builds can be game breaking as is. Now, realistically, okay, if I had to sit down with a power development team and tell them, okay, from a design perspective, this is what you need to do to make the build viable. It's, when the person who makes the best build tells you how to break the builds, you probably should just shut up and listen. Just saying. The risk of making the problem, I don't see it as a problem, because builds that already mix defense and resist, like the higher end Descenders class fire armors, the the pancake chicken builds for stone armor, the electric armor build, the Bishan and Z rad builds. By the time you are mixing these various types of survivability, the Omega Z1 bioarmor builds that are just mixed everything, yeah, they would be made even more powerful by buffing the resist values in the IOs. But the reason why they would be made more powerful is that they don't currently use the resist values in the IOs. I can think of only a few characters who I intentionally designed 707, and if you don't get the joke, turn 707 upside down. It's LOL. The LOL fire farms. I built characters that were designed to go into those from armor sets that had no native fire protections, and I'd go like deep on Gift of the Ancients and Winter's Gift, which had high fire resist, to make passive farmers out of sets that were never designed to be passive farming in a LOL fire farm. Now, because of on the builds that are actually built to play, to go across a wide range of content, there's very, very little focus on using resist in those builds. Everything is built towards defense first, because defense is what's important. Use the utilities of the set outside of that. Simply buffing the resist values that are already in various IOs, tripling them, doubling them, simply giving them percentages of magnitude protection, not duration resist. I mean, if you did just like 1 mag protection on it, or a 0.75 mag protection, and just let it add up, you would not drastically change the overall balance of how the powers interact. Now, would that actually make those mixed builds more powerful? Probably not, and once again, I'm going to have to go back and look at an action. I really should have brought a laptop over. Or it should have just mixed this on the laptop. And I may just do a separate video later, because I realize I'm talking a lot now, and this has gone more podcast style than, hey, look at what I'm doing on the screen. Let's move that back down. And, okay. And I want to bring up, okay, just for example, I'm going to bring up the Omega Z1 build. And that is a tanker. It is a bio radiation, and I had two versions. I had a version with the eradication on IG and eradication on AS, and basically that stood for eradication on irradiated ground or eradication on Atom Smasher, and it's kind of trying to figure out which one was the more damaging overtime component, because Eradication has a uh, low damage potential, but Atom Smasher benefits from a higher recharge. And just tossing back and forth between both of them, either approach was actually turning out identical numbers. But I'm just going to go to info and read down this. So, first power, hardened carapace, 2.25 resist, energy negative. Alright, actually going to... one of the advantages of Vivaldi, the browser, is that it includes a note function. So we'll just create a new note, and Unbreakable Guard gives me 2.25 energy negative. Next one down, Contaminated Strike gives me 6%. Okay, but there's a reason why that's not going to matter very quickly. 6% Fire Cold. Thing is, in purple and ATOs, it's already very easy to cap the fire cold resistance. And 6% is actually 6%, 2.25 times 2 or times 3 is really close to 6%. So that's, you're basically bringing the 6% purple level down to the commons. Alright, nothing on Inexhaustible, nothing on Environmental Modification, nothing on Ablative Carapace, Evolving Armor, nothing on Evolving Armor, Radiation Siphon. Once again, I have 6%. This is to energy negative, and I have 6% to Smashing Lethal, 6% to Fire Cold, and this is actually the tanker proc, so this is kind of an outlier. 6% Fire Cold. I thought there was a Smash Lethal. Mess. Huh. Oh, that's because it's higher up in it. Oh, don't mind me. Okay, next one down. DNA Siphon. I have 2.25 to Smashing Lethal. I have 3% to Fire Cold. And that's all that's there. Maneuvers, I have 1.5 to Smashing Lethal. And then Genetic Contamination, nothing there. Although I could have 6% to Toxic Psi. And 6% to Smashing Lethal, but I didn't go that deep. Irradiated Ground, nothing there. Parasitic Armor, nothing there. Devastating Blow, 6% Fire Cold. Okay. So Atom Smasher, 6% Fire Cold. Gloom, nothing there. Dark Obliteration, 6% Fire Cold. Alright, now looking at my totals, presently I am on a tank pushing 72 Smash Lethal, 28 Energy Negative, 54 Fire Cold, and 62 Toxic. Alright, so if I go back and I start adding up all of those other, boosting them all to 6%. So 2.2, okay, let's bring up calc. Let's do 6 minus 225, 2.25, 3.75. So energy negative plus 3.75. Okay, next one down, that's not already at 6%, Smashing Lethal. So another Smashing Lethal plus 3.75. Next one down, Fire Cold plus 3%. And the next one down, 1.5 Smashing Lethal. Let's call that 4.5. So in total, if all of the resist values were bumped up to 6%, I would only gain on Smashing Lethal. I would gain 72 plus 3.75 plus 4.5. I'd only be at 80.25%. I'd still not even be near the cap. On Energy Negative, if I bump that to 6, it'd be 28 plus 3.75, 31.75. If I go down to Fire Coal, 54 plus 3% equals 57%. It's not exactly what you would call a big boost. Alright, so the point here is that simply boosting the non-purple resist values to purple values, and maybe even increasing the purple values by a percent or two, like flatline it at base value is 6%, purple value is 8%, you still wouldn't break the balance, but you would make it a lot easier for players to take enhancements that have resistant values, because there's powers in here that I didn't take that maybe I could have taken. I could have Numina has a 3.75 resist. If that was a 6% resist value on pump 5, you might go a little deeper on Numina. Preventative Medicine has 2.25 resist smash lethal, 3% fire cold. If you bump those to 6%, you'd have more reasons to take preventative medicine further out. And that's kind of really the point here, is that simply boosting those values, I say triple because that makes for the dramatic case of just how vast the gap is between soft cap, defense, survivability, and what that brings. And the more defense types you can cover, the greater your survivability is. I mean, if you can just do smashing lethal fire cold, you're actually going to also have very high defenses just from the IO secondary bonuses to melee and AoE. So if teammates start buffing you, or you start laying down to hit debuffs, or someone else starts laying down to hit debuffs, those values that you hadn't quite covered suddenly become more and more valuable. And that's the force multiplication at work. Now, and I've realized there's an entire argument here on power creep. There are already super powered builds that you can make. The problem is they all look the same. You always use the same set of IOs, you always use the same grouping of IOs, because they all have the bonuses that actually make your character survive longer. The only way to break that term build homogenization, the only way to break it is to either add, well, there's twofold. You add more powers, period. You add more ways for players to get to a goal. If the goal is defense, then you add more ways to get defense that are not, that are unique to that specific path. Say like on the teleport IO set that I designed, where I went with a really high melee defense on pump 4. Well, if the final slot is unique, then you have a preventative medicine situation. Preventative medicine gives you an 8.75% recharge time. It is the only set that I'm aware of in game that offers that level of recharge. And because it is the only set that offers that level of recharge, it is one heal set that most players will go deep on, not necessarily because of the proc, which is awesome, and is a very powerful absorb proc, and native absorbs and other absorb procs should, looking at you, blistering cold, no, not blistering cold, entomb, should be just as powerful, and they are not. And there's some other that some other power that, it says absorb, and you take it and you go like, where's the absorb? It's not really showing up. Sentinels. Anyways, the point kind of, to get away from it is that to break build homogenization, you've got to break the reliance on a specific build path. And sometimes, yeah, that means we're just going to have to change this other path because it's not viable. We might not be able to predict all of the outcomes of it. We make some of these game breaking builds even more game breaking, but we're going to lower the barrier for other players to make builds that can survive or participate in higher level content or more difficult content, and we're going to make it easier for players to enjoy the game on their terms. And the other thing is to break build homogenization, and we probably should do a new slide for this. Alright, Control A, function delete, and we'll do the tab up top here, and we'll do it in that obnoxious pink, and we'll title this Breaking Build Homogenization. Pretty sure I didn't spell that correctly. I didn't. And okay, so step 1 is, and we'll style this, we'll go with a purple. Step 1, new unique IOs. Alright, step 2. New IOs with higher tier buff values. And again, I went over this in the teleport proc. Alright, step 3. And actually, we'll start here, purple. That's where you are. We'll go up 1. Alright, we went up, we'll go up 1. And step 3. Wow. New pull powers with similar end effects. And we'll do a secondary box out here. And we went with this, so we'll go with that. And we'll do an arrow pointing here to make it clear. And oh wow. Okay, that's how that works. Yeah, sorry, give me a minute. Oh, that's hard to see. That's not exactly what I wanted to happen. Alright. And we'll do an example here where hasten 70% recharge. Permeable. Okay? So what we need as a response to hasten is, say, experience or optimized reduction. 30% global reduction. Or let's call it optimization. Optimization, 30% global reduction. So instead of buffing your recharge power, whereas hasten buffs your recharge power directly. It buffs your base recharge. It gives you 70% recharge. Optimization just lops 30% off whatever the base recharge timer is. So that if, let's say, a power is 300 seconds under optimization, alright, we'll do 300. I want to go move to, how do I, and a brief moment where I kind of go, can I even do that on this calculator? Oh, configure calculator. Yeah, that would be nice. Alright. Oh, because it's not a scientific calculator. Yeah, that figures. Okay. And what, really? That brief moment is when you discover that Kcalc is not actually installed. No wonder I'm not finding what I'm looking for. I'm not really sure why it's not installed. Uh, I'm going to take a look at Speed Crunch for a second. Alright, Speed Crunch. What do we got here? I have... Okay, I want to do 300. Well, let's... Okay, 300 minus 30% equals... Yeah, it's going to tell me it's an invalid. Okay, well, that was Speed Crunch. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be doing or not doing, but apparently it doesn't work. So let's get my Kcalc. Oh, you know it's late. Okay. Here's my Kcalc. That's the interface I'm used to. Alright, 300 minus 30%. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, sort of like, yeah, I could have done that in my head, but it's 2 10 seconds. And then the thought were, I'm not actually showing the whole display, so the whole point of actually pushing it into the calculator instead of just saying what it was, I just jumped through a lot of hoops I didn't need to. All for the sake of making a point that optimization, that kind of power would just, you'd go from 300 seconds to 2 10 seconds just by selecting optimization. Now, if you took optimization, you wouldn't be able to take hasten. Now, you may actually, want to do split the difference, like maybe 45% just global reduction. So a 300-second power turns into a 165-second power. Or 300 seconds to 165 seconds. And then from that point, the power recharge is calculated from that lower recharge rate on basis of optimization. You haven't made something that's as powerful as hasten, but you've now made a background power that players could take optimization and they get a global recharge decrease that they can now, they start adding in IO buffs, they get to a decent amount, say 80% base IO buffs, not quite to where they would be with perma hasten, but they now can, looking at closing the gap on making long-term powers more useful more often without having to take hasten. And the more powers you have available in pool powers or tertiary powers, the more powers you make available to offer speed ups to the player, even if the Let's think of another one. So we have Hasten with 70% recharge. We got Optimization, which reduces global recharge. What other ways could we reduce recharge? Uh, we could do, well, there's already the Stalker mechanic where you critical and you get a power recharge. So maybe, how would I implement this? Yeah, that's a dangerous question. How would I implement it? Uh, it's like I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of a cross between the Stalker mechanic and the Brute's Rage, where how would a pool power, how would a rage power work? Um, Now I do what I normally do when I hit a block like this. I go to thesaurus.com. I'm going to type in rage. And let's see, we got animosity, bitterness, exasperation, excitement, frenzy, furia. I like furia. Okay. Furia, a passion. Or outburst. What's the etymology on outburst? I'm trying to think, are there any powers named outburst already? I don't think there are. Oh, that's nice. Paroxysm. Let's type this one in. Paroxysm. Okay, let's imagine that paroxysm is a tertiary ancillary power. Who's a good patron for it? Or who would it make sense to have outburst? You can't see me shrugging here, but you know, a fusion that was a giving out powers, an inexplicable explosion of energy. Now, how would this work? How would paroxysm, a sudden uncontrollable outburst, a fit of emotion or action, how would this work as a mechanic in, say, Fusionette's? Well, she would be energy based, or I think she would be radiation energy based, so her powers would probably take half from, say, something from energy aura, something from radiation armor, maybe a mix up of the two. So, let's go with paroxial aura. This is from Fusionette, and this gives minus 10% recharge for each enemy. Now that sounds interesting. It sounds like, you know, beta decay, but beta decay, or minus 10% global reduction, minus 10% recharge reduction for each enemy. So let's think that through for a second. If our aggro cap and we'll bring up, oh wait, that's just going to give me the defender cap, not the tanker cap. Okay, target cap something like 16 characters, like 16 enemies, or let's say target capped at 10 enemies. Therefore, if you took Fusion X Paroxial Aura at 10 enemies deep, you would be having minus 100% recharge reduction. And that'd just be a global reduction to recharge. That would effectively half your global recharge. If I thought that correctly, yeah, you'd cut your global reduction in half, or more realistically for a tertiary power, something like 5% recharge. So if you took optimization and paroxysmal aura, you could get close to 95% global reduction in your recharge time. Now, you'd have to be in the middle of a mob, but you could be turning perma-hasten-like performance by taking two other powers that now you'd have to make other choices on. You can't take hasten, so you can't take super speed. If optimization has a travel power, you may not be able to take another travel power. And those are other choices that you can make. But either way, you've now given the player more options on how they can get more recharge or get the effect of more recharge. And now you've broken the builds that rely on hasten, because now somebody actually has a choice where they go, I need this recharge to get this power to do this. I can only get that recharge with hasten. I have to take hasten. Or, I can get that recharge if I take optimization. Or I can take that recharge if I get paroxysmal aura. And now you've freed up. The player doesn't have to take hasten. They now have other options, and they can now take those other options. Excuse me. Yes, I'm aware that my throat is going dry, and I'm about to have to start chugging some water. Okay, so as discussed in the teleport stream, we new unique IOs. New IOs only get higher tier buff values. Don't do any more commons. Just do rares. Just do the rare split, as in the teleport stream. Step 3, new poo powers that have similar end effects, even if the mechanics are very different. This breaks up build homogenization. And okay, what else can we do to break build homogenization? Well, do we rebalance? Or instead of rebalancing, let me phrase this a different way. Now, let's check our color here. We're there, so I'm going for that orange next. Okay, so that orange. And we'll go and we'll select you as the darker. And we'll do an arrow over. Give ourselves some space to type. And step 4. Flat cap. Simplify current bonus tiers for effects. And the theoretical idea here is, no non-defense IO value below current tier 4 level value. So any IO bonus that is currently below in the tier 1, 2, or 3 automatically gets bumped to tier 4. And that's across all IOs. Now, automatically, that makes the lower tier IOs, the ones you would drop and then sell, or just go to the pay-to-win vendor and say turn off uncommons, just so they don't spam your inbox. That now makes all of those valuable, because they're not valuable if they are easily replaced and they don't offer values that are still worth it to keep as you get later in the build. Simply by boosting the IO values of the lower level enhancements, the uncommons, up to tier 4, just ignoring the first 3 tiers, just X them out, boost everything up, minimize it tier 4, you've now given players a reason as they are leveling to maybe focus on crafting that IO instead of just selling it or putting it on the auction house or doing whatever or just turning that drop off completely. You've now given them a reason to seriously consider some of those. And let me go. Really should have brought a laptop with me. But it's already difficult enough balancing a lapboard and a keyboard and a mouse. Trying to balance the laptop next to me while doing this was not exactly what I would have called a joyful experience. Give me a second. I'm missing a cat. And any time that the cat goes missing, I normally wind up having my mouse hand interrupted by pouncing feline. Well, he's not in his box. I may have to turn the lights on. Oh, there he is. Okay. Cat located. And the perils of cat ownership. I'm just going to go through some of the enhancements that have zero value at all. Impervious skin. It's got a nice status resistance, but that's the only reason you're going to take it, because the 5% enhancement recharge time is easily bested by a number of other enhancements. It's low values, you just skip it. Same with reactive armor, same with impervium armor, same with titanium coating. And, okay, moving on, looking at... In the melee, you have Bone Snap, Pulverizing Fisticuff, Bruising Blow, Pounding Slugfest, Smashing Haymaker, Focus Might, Gladiator Strike, all which have... Those are all enhancements you would just skip because they don't have values or bonuses worth going for. Kinetic Melee, it's got a very good 3.75% defense in the Pump 4 slot. Touch of Death, it has a very good melee defense in the Pump 6 slot. Crushing Impact, it does give you a recharge time. It is an uncommon. And for a lot of... I used Crushing Impact a lot in older builds because it was readily available. Mako's Bite has a very good range defense. It's the only melee that gives a range defense. If range defense was available in more melees, if you had a range defense down on, say, Pulverize... Okay, Mako's Bite gives you 3.75% defense range. If you had 3.75% defense ranged on Pulverizing Fisticuffs, and you could get Fisticuffs at level 10... And, okay, it caps at level 25, but you still had at 3.75% defense ranged, you'd keep using Pulverizing Fisticuffs even if you were at level 50, because you get that same range defense on Mako Bite, but Mako Bite, you got to go 6 slots. If you could get that range defense on Pulverizing Fisticuffs, then you might choose to finish out the build, say, since I'm looking at, what am I looking at? Contaminated Strike. You could look at, say, your defense debuffs, your accurate defense debuffs. You could start looking at other enhancements to add on there. But without that option, and this is, we're going to go into enhancement diversification failed because, A, it didn't really encourage players to diversify the enhancements. It just encouraged players to not play their build that suddenly no longer worked. But IOs did exactly the same thing. The only way IO values are worth anything is to deep slot. And if you deep slot and you have multiple different IOs, like Contaminated Strike takes melee, takes defense debuff, takes taunt, takes accurate defense debuff, takes ATO, takes universal damages, which is the Summer Blockbuster set. If you only can get the values that you want in one of those sets, like you can only get 10% enhancement recharge time and Hecatomb on melee, you're not going to look at the other sets. You're only going to look at the defense debuff as if you get a 10% recharge enhancement, or you get defense debuff with damage, or you get accurate debuff with damage. And that's, prime opportunity for more enhancements just right there. Accurate defense debuff plus damage. Defense debuff plus damage. Slow plus damage. Toggle slow. 2-hit plus damage. 2-hit toggle. 2-hit debuff plus damage. 2-hit debuff toggle. Actually, Dark Watch is pretty good on the 2-hit debuff toggle, because you get 2-hit debuff recharge, endurance, and 2-hit debuff endurance. So you do have 3 endurance and Dark Watch and spare. So it's actually pretty good if you're trying to make Darkest Night manageable as an all the time toggle without vastly investing. Okay, but continuing on, most of the taunts aren't worth taking. There's not a taunt damage. So for tankers or brutes, which really could use taunt plus damage, they'll take a little less taunt, a little less damage to not, But even if you have taunt on a power, if your damage gives you 10% recharge at pump 5, or 6% smashing resistance at pump 6, and 5% melee at pump 5, you're not going to be taking the taunt sets. There's room for a healing damage. Or a is there anything that's a toggle heal? And yeah, there's Pain gets Soothing Aura, so there are some toggle heals. But Preventative Medicine has heal endurance recharge time, heal recharge time endurance. So if you're trying to crater that endurance cost, you already got sets that do offer a substantial amount of endurance reduction. And just kind of down the line, just looking at did I already go through the heals now? Triage. No one takes Triage. If you go and turn off uncommons, you'll never see a Triage ever. Regenerative Tissue. A lot of people take the proc. Nobody takes the set. Harmonized Healing. Nobody takes the set. Miracle. People take the proc. Nobody takes the set, because it's okay. You do get AoE defense at pump 5 and Sonic defense at pump 6, but it's not really enough you can't make a defensive Sonic build unless you have some other method of native power that already boosts your Sonic defense. Say Minerals on a Stone Tanker, or Mind over Body, what's the other of Indomitable Will. Or, if you're a willpower and you... Alright, over on the endurance reduction, we actually got 3 new endurance enhancements recently. Preventive Optimization, Power Transfer, and Synapse Shock. These all were implemented perfectly. They give you high levels of enhancement values. A Synapse Shock gives you an interesting proc and lots of opportunity for NMOD recharge, NMOD increased run speed. You get a decent amount of regeneration, you get a decent amount of resist effect to slows, you get a decent amount of movement speed. You actually have a 4.5 resistance energy negative in the pump 6 slot, and that's really high. That's sort of like if you're trying to build a character to go up against Lord Recluse, you'd probably be slotting a 6-slot Synapse Shock because of Channel Gun. Power Transfer, another good one, 7.5% on the pump 6. It's got a decent accuracy boost, it's got a decent hit point boost, it's got a decent AC boost. Its regeneration isn't really anything to write home about, but it does have a chance to heal itself, and this is in an endurance power. You can get nasty with that, throwing that on what was it? The experimentation, the dart. You could just throw it on there and have a chance for a heal there. Preventive Optimization, 3.75% defense ranged all the way down in pump 6. You'd go deep on that because you didn't have a ranged defense on an endurance modification before. Now you do, and so if you're trying to close up the defensive gap and you've got, say, something like Chrono Shift or radiation emission, accelerate metabolism, going deep on preventative optimization because you're not doing. And this is the other thing: synapse shock and power transfer both have damage components. They are how you do a damage plus buff or debuff enhancement. They are the model. This is how whoever did these. You did a great job. I cannot say that enough. You did a great job with these 3 sets. This you should do like a video on this is how I made them. This was my logic. This was my justification. You did good. All right, but on the other hand, you wouldn't take the other endurance modification sets now. I mean, performance shifter and efficiency adapter were already hard sells to begin with. Energy manipulator and adrenal adjustment were just you'd never take them. You'd never even see adrenal adjustment because most people just go straight to pay to win now and just turn uncommons off. That's a lot of enhancements that if you just change the tier values and just went, you know what, no more tier 1, 2, 3. Everything starts at 4, that's the new base level. Just do that. And you break the build homogenization and you give players reason to go and think, I really could use that lower level set because it got a really good buff right there. Okay, but that's how you break build homogenization. You don't whine about build homogenization. You don't whine about all the builds are looking the same. You don't complain about it, and then when somebody says, well, why don't you just, here's a power suggestion, go, oh, we're not going to do that. Or given enhancement suggestion, go, oh, we're not going to do that. No, that's not how you break build homogenization. So these are 4 simple steps to break build homogenization. Step 1, new unique IOs. Went over this in the teleport. Add new mechanics to powers that make sense for what that power might be able to do based on who's providing the enhancement. If you're a teleporter and you're a warper, of course it makes sense that you could manipulate the warp energy to have incandescence-like effects on your teammate, because that's what incandescence does. And you may not be able to do it powerful or as wide, but you can get an incarnate-like power through enhancements. That's one way to go. New IOs with higher tier buff values. We're already seeing that with the 3 endurance modifications I just listed off. We see that with, I will pick on bombardment for a second. Its values are too low. Especially that recharge. That recharge really should have been actually it should have been 8.5%. It should not have been set at 5%. But the range enhancement, getting range, and I can't remember another TOAE with range in it because most of the TOE sets suck. And it's like, I really hate Positron Blast for no good reason. But for a TOA, for the targeted area of effect enhancements, you were either going to take Ragnarok, the Frozen Blast, I think, with the chance for Immobilize, or an ATO. That was pretty much it. That was the extent of your options for targeted AoEs. ATO, Frozen Blast, or the purple. That's it. Adding in artillery and bombardment, now you have more options. If bombardment gets a better set bonuses, it'd be great. You'd have your damage proc, you'd have your range boost, you'd have some very valuable items that are not common real quickly. And then step 3, new pool powers with similar end effects. Don't focus on matching the exact effect. Focus on making something that does something that ultimately, you want a recharge boost. Well, how can we give you a recharge boost without remaking hasten? Well, we can do a global reduction. We can do a per enemy targeted reduction. We can do a just flat percentage loss. Or we can do like the Stalker mechanic. You do something with your powers, a proc goes off, and your other powers recharge. Now you may have to you may get like, let's focus on artillery and bombardment for a second. Let's say that at pump 6 on artillery and bombardment, you have all 6. You have you unlock artillery and artillery bombardment synchronization. And what that means is that whenever you fire artillery, and a TOE with 6 slotted artillery in it, any power with a 6 slotted bombardment in it becomes available. Just no matter where it is in the recharge, it just snaps back. So you hit artillery, and then you can automatically hit bombardment. Now you might have a timer on this synchronization, but it's another method of, if you did something like that in game, you would break build homogenization, because now people would go, you know what? If I did like our artillery on sleet, and then I put bombardment on ice storm, I could do sleet, and no matter what ice storm's at, I can now fire off ice storm right away. You would have people radically up in all of their ice builds to do that. Now, okay, then you force the situation where, well, that power combination is too overpowering. Is it more or less overpowering than which currently be reached? What other trade-off will we have to make that happen? Because you're now talking about two, for like dominators, going really deep on 2 tertiary powers. You're going to have to give up something else somewhere, and that is the trade-off. What are players going to give up to get an effect that is very good? And this is going back to the teleport live stream, where you can make new enhancements, but unless you give characters a reason to have that enhancement, you make that enhancement good enough that it's competitive, that you get players to go, yeah, that's 4 slots. I only ever put 1 slot in my travel powers. How am I going to get that slot with that power that's really, really useful? And that's breaking build homogenization. You make players make the choices on, do they really want that effect, or do they want to continue with what they got? Can they make a stronger build with that effect? If they can, then they're going to go for that. They're going to come up with different ways to get that power and maybe stay close to where they were, but either way, they're going to wind up breaking their build. You get a lot of this going in at once or rolled out over time. It doesn't really matter. Players start readjusting their builds. I've started readjusting my builds for the endurance and for bombardment and for artillery, because those enhancements offer significant value, especially bombardment's 2-slot range. That's if you ramp that up, you got several TOEs, and you get 3 or 4 of those in. You've now got 15-20% range boost, and now let's say you're a flyer, you can now rain down destruction even further out of range of enemies, and if you can fire beyond their effective attack range, you can be attacking an enemy, and if you're not at soft cap defense, still be relatively safe. You can also, buff your enemy from longer away. If you've got a heal and it's got an 80-foot range, and you've got 4 2-slot artilleries, you've got another 20% range, you now have an easier time. Someone who was just out of range before, now you can just smack them with a heal. So that's breaking build homogenization. And like I said, step 4 is rethink, rebalance, or not even rebalance, just eliminate the lower 3 tiers. Just X them out, remove them from the system, deprecate them, depreciate them, however you want to say it. Get rid of them, bring everything up to tier 4 at the bare minimum, and just use tier 4, tier 5, and on up to the purples. That's your bonus range. That's what makes that's what gets players to think that I really could use this lower level power, this lower level enhancement now, and that gives me freedom where if I can just craft that one, I can now, use whatever drops I get. I still have a somewhat decent character, and now I can really play around with what do I want to do with this build. You give your players options. And that's really what it comes down to breaking build homogenization. More options, good. Less options, bad. Excuse me. Well, as you can hear, my voice is slowly starting to fade away, so it's probably about time for me to call it quits on this. So, more options, good. Less options, bad. And with that, that's where I'm going to end tonight's Hybrid Theory. This is Aurian Archive, and as always, I'll catch you later.